Hi, and welcome back to the panel room. I'm your host, Jim Nettles, and tonight we're going to be tripping you all over to fall into all sorts of research rabbit holes and trying to lead you astray so that make sure that you're not getting that writing done, but you never know exactly what fun fact might wind up in something 7 books from now. So, before we go too far down this route, let's let everybody know who is on tap tonight to help guide you astray. Ms. Carr, you're up first.
Hi, I am the one, the only, the R.E. Carr, author of urban fantasy, horror, comedy, science fiction, and sometimes lit RPG. If that doesn't put you going down of multiple rabbit holes, I don't know what is. My specialities are dinosaurs, Greek mythology, and lots of cooking tips. And at any given moment, my cat is going to keep moving my screen. So this is going to be a fun, neurodivergent night.
You forgot the tentacles. Ken.
I'm Ken Lange. I write lit RPG, mythic science fiction, and dark fantasy. That's pretty much just about me. And thankfully, my cat is not moving my camera. He's actually asleep over here, being like this. So I'm safe from the cats for now. At least
Nancy?
I'm Nancy Northcott. I write historical fantasy, sometimes with and sometimes without strong romantic elements. I also write paranormal romance and romantic suspense. And with Jeannie Adams, I write the Outcast Station science fiction series. And every single one of those has required some research.
James?
Hey, I'm J.E. Pittman. You can call me James. I write the Felix Chant series of books and the soon-to-be out spinoff Saint Germain letters. I do a lot of research for Felix. As you can see, my conspiracy board behind me, that's full of Easter eggs for all of you hardcore fans, so come see it at a booth sometime. But yeah, research rabbit holes are my entire series, basically.
Matthew?
Hello, everybody. I'm Atlanta author Matthew W. Quinn. My most successful series is called The Long War, The Thing in the Woods, The Atlanta Incursion, and The Walking Worm. That got me into the Horror Writers Association. I also have a steampunk military fantasy series called Battle for the Wastelands. And I have a novella out through Deadite Press called Little People, Big Guns.
And Mel?
I'm Mel Todd. I write stories of wonder because trying to assign genres, I'd be here all night. I have a lot of books out and I'm writing even more. And I have pretty new books out because they're pretty. And you will see multiple cats bouncing around behind me. That's the kitten, and the other one's in the chair trying to ignore her.
So, one of the things that, one of the great joys of being a writer has nothing to do with putting words to paper. It's all the ideas we have to go and play with, because we all know it's not the actual writing, it's not getting the story done, it's the ideas, right? As everybody starts to throw things at me. But, it's really often the ideas and how we sculpt them. Yes, I know, word count. It's the ideas, it's how we sculpt them. It's often the influences, the details, the little trivial facts we pull out from across space and time and occasionally technology that help us kind of sculpt the situations we're going to throw characters and put them into. So, Rachel, what's a favorite research tool, site, approach, book? What's a favorite tool for you?
Having ravaging ADHD and eavesdropping on strangers is an actual technique that I have used multiple times. If there is one thing in the world that will teach you how to write really good dialogue, is to be very bored and listening to everyone else's conversation. I'm not saying you should offer advice or tell their secrets, or heaven forbid they tell you their PIN number in the bathroom. True things that only seem to happen to me. But I'm saying that anytime you can just sit back and pay attention, because you never know. Literally have a book that was inspired by a horrible case of food poisoning, combined with a quote from World War I, that there are no atheists in a foxhole. So if you limit yourself to one thing, and I always found that if you try to force yourself to research, it's never quite as good as what is just sort of soaking up everything in your ambient world. And then over time, it sort of composts and festers in your brain, and eventually the ideas come out.
Yeah, and having traveled and spent a lot of my life sitting in hotels, airports,
Mm.
all that good stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of characters when you go that
Yeah.
route. You just got to
I'm
make
never
some
saying
notes.
never copy anyone, but I'm saying you can definitely pick up notes and ideas and moments, and the more you experience, the better you're going to write. So that's where I start.
Ken, how about for you?
As far as the ideas go, that starts with either lyrics from songs or pictures, but then I start trying to look stuff up that the ideas from those things do. For instance, jet engine propulsion with the and now I forgot the name. Basically, creates a little spiral in the trail behind it, and so you just kind of one thing will trigger. It's like the conspiracy theory map you see on TV. That's how my brain works.
Or
So
behind John's head.
yeah, but I need all the little wires and
Yeah.
lines and
You've got to
yarn.
use the red threads. That way it
Yeah, the
looks.
yarn in between.
That's the
And
next evolution of it.
yeah, it's a weird type of logic that just takes me from one place to the other. But that and Google Maps, believe it or not, you would be surprised how many things come up. For instance, I was looking in San Diego and found uh, a restaurant that now it's taking place this whole big mall in this restaurant with all the zombies. So just because the restaurant looked weird. So again, not logical, just weird. So yeah.
Nancy, how about for you?
Well, I'd like to add a little to what Ken said about maps because I've found maps to be very useful too. I was working on a story set in Lincoln during the First World War, and I didn't want to just make up the towns. So I started Googling maps of Lincoln 1917 and discovered that the National Library of Scotland has an interactive collection of historical maps online. And I could zero in on Lincoln. The map was 1920 something, but early 1920s, but I figured it's not that much of a difference. And I could zero in on it down to individual houses. I could figure out where the gun emplacements for the defense against Zeppelins were put. I mean, that was really, really handy. And the other thing is just ask people. Ask people, do you know anybody who knows anything about this? For my paranormal romance series, which is not represented behind me, I have one book in which the heroine is half Cherokee. And the book was several years old, and coming around to reissue it, I thought, I want a little bit more in-depth cultural assessment than I got the first time I was doing this. And I did not know anybody in the Cherokee Nation. And so I just started asking everybody I know, do you know anybody who's a member of the Cherokee Nation who would be willing to talk to me? And my son's fiance said, well, no, but I know a guy who's Lumbee and he might be willing to talk to you. And so he did. And he had a friend who's Cherokee who was willing to check certain things for him. And it was just because I was desperate. And I was saying to everybody, do you know anybody? And so they did. And I also ended up that way talking to an assistant professor who teaches I think it's marine biology. I don't think it's oceanography. It's been a while because the next book in the Outcast Station series focuses on the planet's oceans. I was a history major. I didn't study oceans or squiggly creatures that live there. And
You should have asked me. I do squiggly creatures.
But I didn't know that. And so I ended up talking to her. And I also think it's a good idea when you're reaching out to people that you don't know to offer, can I buy you lunch and pick your brain? Can I buy you a cup of coffee and pick your brain? Because it's not like I want you to just donate your time to my personal career goal. And so I took the marine biologist to lunch a couple of times and picked her brain for an hour over lunch. And it was very, very productive. And now I just have to finish putting the rest of the words on the page for the book.
Yeah, I also find it very helpful when you offer to kill them in the book.
Weird. They actually do love that. Dedications or death. Either one.
James, what about for you?
Well, everybody said a lot of one of my favorite ones, especially Nancy's with the trade coffee, lunches, dinners, drinks for information. But I will double down on that and add conventions. If you don't know and you can't rely on your friend network to just randomly put you in touch with somebody, go to your favorite sci-fi or Comic-Con or whatever. There are these, things called panels, like kind of like we're doing right now, but in person, where experts get up there and blab. And if you're doing science fiction, I know a few people from NASA now, and some other really smart people. One of the world's foremost neuroscientists, and just because I go to conventions and I can be like, "Hey, so and so, I'm doing this thing in the book. Is that plausible? Is that not plausible?" I did get lucky for my action military sci-fi series. One of my best friends is married to an Army Ranger, so I took him out for beers a few times, and he told me stories, and none of them ended up in the book because none of them can end up in the book. But you know what I'm saying is like that human connection. People love to tell you about their special interests, their passion projects, their careers, especially if, like Nancy was talking about, a marine biologist. How often do they get to like just go off to someone about all that they love, not necessarily showing off, but just finding people to be enthusiastic about their career choice with. So that's a great way I found. Another thing I love to do, kind of tagging on what Ken said, Google Maps is great for referencing and Street View is great for getting a feel, but one step better, YouTube walking tours, because I was doing like book set in Nashville. I hadn't been at that point and didn't know much about it, but I wanted a good feel. And someone had done, I just Googled Nashville tour. Someone had done a bus tour, someone had done a walking tour, so I could see, like, actually immerse myself in the street and just kind of get a little bit of a vibe of what's going on. So basically, if you can think of it for a book, somebody's probably done something similar for it. Just, YouTube walking tours of this cathedral or something like that. You're going to come up with something. And the second thing to do with that, double check your sources. Unless it's not mission critical. If it's just like, oh, I need a one-off thing, whatever, Google or AI or whatever can just fill in the blank here. If it's actually very, very poignant, very, very integral to the plot, get at least 3 things that say the thing you're looking for, and preferably independently. That way it's not just somebody's opinion.
Check your sources.
Yep.
Matthew, how about for you?
Okay, I second the one about interviewing people. In The Walking Worm, the protagonist is in the college ROTC program. So I interviewed my uncle who taught ROTC at Georgia State University for a while about how the ROTC program would work. And a big chunk of that went into The Walking Worm. So here's something I've only dipped my toe in a little bit in, but college libraries, if they'll let you get a non-student card, like I have an alumni card for Georgia State University, which I bought and used maybe once, but I could go down there and check out a much greater variety of much more deep niche research books than you can get for the public library. Also podcasts. There's a lot of history podcasts I listen to. Many of them interview authors of books, but others don't.
So, Mel, how about for you? I know you have a list ready to go.
I was going to say, you guys all want to talk to people way more than I have any desire to talk to anybody.
I'm not saying we want to. I'm just saying it's sometimes more expedient.
Honestly, this is half the reason that I write my own made-up world, so that I don't lose hours to research. Instead, I lose hours to world creation and know some awesome tools to do that with. But I don't know if you want me to be like, you could do this with this one, and this one has this information, and this has this information. Because there's some pretty awesome places.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, I'm going to share because I like all of my tools.
All right.
We're going to do this one.
I dip in fantasy every single day.
Okay. So one of the first ones is this one. This is one of the best name generators I have ever seen.
And second that one.
I've been on that site so many times.
Because, like, let's say I was writing some stories that were in Victorian England. I can literally say, oh, I would like a English name, a British name, like real names. Okay. Mm-hmm. I want it in Europe. I would like to go to an English British name. And they're like, well, do you want neutral names, male names, female names, all of this? And they're like, well, do you want pop culture names? Where would you? This is like literally one of the best websites I have ever seen for just coming up with names. So it's a lot of fun. And sometimes you're like, okay, I like this name, but let's try these again. I don't know why the colors are reversed. The other one, you guys were all talking about maps and stuff. Well, I use Incarnate when I have to actually create something. Now, you can get the first 10 maps free. Okay, so you don't have to pay money unless you want to do the fancy stuff. But the other thing it will let you do is you can say, oh, I want to create a map, and you choose which style from the free. You can even tell it to just randomly generate stuff for you. I mean, the more you pay for it, the more stuff you get, but it's pretty cool in that if you just are like, okay, generate a map for me, and it's going to sit here and come up with blank space, and then you start going, okay, oh, I want land here. Let's make the land really, and then let's go put, I love this. And note, I am not a good map maker by any means, because, well, I suck, but I do love the fact that I can go and create anything I want based off of this. And this is the one that I have created for the world. Honestly, the book that I was showing off. This is the map for that world. And that was all created on here just with the free stuff because I needed to know how the continents were laid out. So it's actually kind of nice to be able to do stuff like that.
That is
the
so
other one,
cool.
Since we're still talking about things, I don't know about you, but I have the worst time when somebody walks into a house, remembering what side I put the dining room on, where it is. This is an awesome program called Floor Plan Creator, and you can log me out. You can log in and just create a basic floor plan. You're like, okay, well, it's a square room, and you start zooming out, and you can build it. And I like how they did their pricing, because with theirs, instead of saying, oh, you have to subscribe, you get the first project free. And then you can buy another 10 maps for $6. And then until you run out of maps, you don't owe anything else. And now I'm not trying to build a super fancy thing, but knowing where things are when you have people in a building, it's like super duper important.
Mel,
Okay.
Are these maps just for personal reference, or could you actually publish one in a book if you wanted to?
You can publish it. You created it. These are all owned by you once you were done creating it.
Okay.
I mean, this one I could technically publish anywhere I want. Mostly I just wanted it for myself, but I'll probably include it on my website as fun stuff. But no, you created it. This is all yours.
And another reason.
I will stop here because I have lots of other things that we can talk about later.
And one other site I'll mention when we're researching names is 20,000names.com.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's a great one, because I frequently will look up the names, but also look at what is the meaning. Sometimes because I will grab a name for the meaning, and sometimes it's because I want to make sure I didn't grab a name that has a meaning I did not intend.
Yeah, don't use the name Derek for any novel set in New Zealand. Derek works exactly the same as Peter and Dick.
Ah, the more you know.
The more you know. So, kind of since we sort of started talking down the path of some favored things, I want to now go down a little bit of a rabbit hole as a part of this myself, which is when we're looking at some of these research rabbit holes, I want you to kind of bring up what's something odd, unique, fun you found, you had to go find, some great journey you went on, and the tools you used to get there. So, Ken, you're up first on this one.
Christ. So back to the walking tours, and I did this with Romania, Bucharest, and one of the clubs in my book is called Club V. It's a vampire club, but it's actually called the S Club. And I had no idea what I was getting into with this YouTuber going down the street, and he was going through the capital and just going to these different places. Like half the places he visited wound up in the book. It was just this old dilapidated building. It used to be the old Parliament building that now is turned into a bunch of apartments because they built a new Parliament building or whatever. And so he's visiting all these historical sites. And then all of a sudden, when he gets to the evening, he winds up at Club S. And now he's gone to a beer garden and all this other stuff. Typical things you would expect. Beer garden's a little weird because, it's Romanian. And, you're expecting at some point to go visit a vampire place. But no, he went to Club S, which is a combination of a high-end techno club. I'm trying to find the right word that doesn't get this thing banned since it's in the first 20 minutes. Dancers of interesting dress.
Burlesque.
And
Yes, a burlesque.
a dive bar, all in the same place. And it's like, okay, I don't know how I got here, but I don't know how that guy got there. But that was probably the weirdest journey I went on as far as one of the more recent books. And that was in Dawning, and one of my vampire book with Kane. So, but that was a weird one for me.
Nancy?
When I set out to write the Light Mage Wars paranormal romances, I wanted to set them in the South because I've lived in the South my whole life, and I know Southern small towns and Southern people. But I didn't want to set it in Atlanta because at that time there were several fantasy series that were set in Atlanta. So I was talking to my brainstorming group, and I remembered the Okefenokee Swamp. Now, my memory of it was very limited because we used to drive back and forth to Florida to see my dad's family from North Carolina every year. And we would always stop on the way to do something just for our family. And one year we stopped at the Okefenokee Swamp. And I remember almost nothing about it except the name. And that we could not take a boat ride because my mother was afraid that a snake would fall from the tree into the boat. But I mentioned all this to my brainstorming group, and somebody said, well, energy's different in a swamp. And I thought, well, that could be really useful for magic. So for the first book, I couldn't get down there, so I ended up doing the research primarily on Google. But our family was down that way on vacation after the book had sold, and we went to the swamp. And I remember saying as we drove in, I really hope that this is as cool as I think it is because I'm stuck with it now. And we took a boat trip. Now, those of you who know me personally know I am not a nature woman. I want my surroundings climate controlled and my wildlife safely distant. Thank you very much. But we took this boat trip and it was mind blowing because it's a blackwater peat bog, really, not a swamp. And the guide in the boat had a gallon jug with the bottom cut off, and he used it like a scoop, and the water in the jug looked like iced tea. And he said it looks like this because tannins, which is what the Romans used to put in their canteens to keep the water from going bad. And so it's such an alien landscape, 400 square miles on the Georgia-Florida line. You can't get a cell signal when you're out in the middle of it. It's that undeveloped and that wild. There are all these trees with Spanish moss hanging all over them. There are prairies, which are like shallow water with plants visible under it, but usually not sticking out of it unless there's a drought. All kinds of different vegetation. Native Americans lived in the swamp at one point. and then hid there in the 1840s. The Seminoles came up from Florida and hid there. So it was a combination of that, all those things, and it was so beautiful that it started to generate ideas. And so I fell in love with it. I haven't been back in a while, and I'm kind of itching to go just to see it again, because even though the stories are not set in the swamp, there's very little totally solid ground in the swamp where you could set a story. It's a backdrop for the series. And I just went down there because I thought, well, this is kind of cool. And if I don't really love it, I'll just use it like I did for the internet research. Because when I do internet research, I don't like to depend upon it. I keep that to a minimum, the amount that I use it, until I've been able to verify it in other ways. And now I've verified it, and I really love it. And it's turned into a real rabbit hole. We've got all these books about the swamp, and I'll say, I bought another book about the swamp, and my husband's like, yes, of course you did. So,
don't you have an entire wing of the house that's just dedicated to the swamp at this point?
No, but sometimes it feels like it.
So yeah, and in fact, there's in one of the books in one of the series hasn't come out yet, but one of the big closing scenes happens at Giant's Causeway. And when I wrote it originally, I had never been there. And I've subsequently been there and had to rewrite that entire scene because it was a very different environment. So if you can go, it's always helpful. Well, most of the time. James, how about for you? What's a trip you've been on?
Okay, I think everybody's heard me talk about Saint Germain enough, and the alchemy side of things, which has been my most recent rabbit hole. So let me go one step back. One I really had fun with is the first short story I ever sold, Into the Fire, which I'm turning into a novel. But it is about a billionaire who hijacks his own spaceship to go hunt aliens on the moon. Now, I can't go to the moon myself. Not yet. I'm not rich enough. And I'm not a billionaire with his own space program. So I have to do a lot of research from people who have been, those NASA friends of mine now, et cetera, et cetera. But what I do with that series, or that story, is I have to take hard scientific data melded with conspiracy theory and put it as plausible as I possibly can to where I get the details of a moonlander right and orbital mechanics right, but also make it plausible that aliens could be hiding in a hollow moon that they are using as an observation point. So that's a very different kind of research. So you're going on the pseudoscience side of things and the actual, verified science and trying to blend them together. So that's always really fun. And if I can ever go to the moon, I would really enjoy just to kind of get that right, because there are several scenes in there that I think I got right, but I don't know.
Matthew, what about for you?
Let's see, going on trips, in regards to boats, I once took a boat tour all the way around Manhattan Island. It was a very long time. I don't remember a lot of the details beyond they converted a lot of old industrial buildings into some very interesting shaped apartments. Like a sugar mill. It was like a gigantic trapezoidal apartment development. But yeah, definitely visiting the place you want to go was a good idea. Like, The Thing in the Woods is set in a town that it's not Griffin or McDonough. Look at my eye, it's winking, see? I used to be a reporter for the Griffin Daily News. I used to live in Lovejoy, McDonough, and worked in Griffin. And the Lange incursion takes place around Georgia State University. So I knew all that firsthand. The Walking Worm takes place at Chapel Hill. And I have never been there, so I used Google Maps a lot. Going there would have been better.
Yeah, that's kind of questionable, but it is Chapel Hill.
So I just had finished doing a series called Noble Slut that's based in Victorian London. And one of the characters works at a club. And I'm like, that's cool. I go research, I find all this stuff on the club, and I'm like, wait, he's a new employee. How does he know who's a member or not? And I search and I search and I search because I'm thinking, okay, surely they have to have tokens, maybe a book they sign in, nothing. I'm like, I'm spending hours trying to figure out how would somebody, a nobleman who walks into a club, prove that they were a member of this club? Well, finally, I went and I looked in London. There is a club that still exists today that has been in business since the 1300s. I sent them an email. And the email starts with the whole, I'm sorry, I'm an author. I have the strangest question. And the guy was really nice. They responded back pretty fast. And he's like, no, you didn't. They just knew all the guests on site. And I was like, so you could walk in, and if it's a new employee, just look at him and say, well, I'm a member here, and nobody would argue with you. And he's like, no, probably not. And I'm like, this now fascinates me. I didn't use it as a plot point because that wasn't what I was going for. I was thinking, okay, they had to show a coin each time, and it was going to be a single sentence. And I hate spending this much time on single sentences. But it got to the point it was really frustrating me. I'm like, how... it's not like they had IDs or anything else that they could scan or check against a ledger or anything else. So, no, in that time, if you dressed correctly, you could have walked into any gentleman's club, stuck your nose, assuming, of course, you have dangly bits between your legs, stuck your chin up, and if you bluffed it, they would have let you in. That was interesting.
That's how Casanova did it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was honestly expecting something, maybe not fancy, but just something you could counterfeit or something. But no, you just basically said you belonged.
Yeah, St. G does it all the time. Also, he has beef with Casanova, so.
Mm-hmm. If you don't belong now, if you can bluff your way in, then you probably belong there anyway.
Yep.
You know what's worse than spending all that time on one sentence? Is spending all that time and then cutting it when you go through it.
Oh my God.
Cutting it all. It's like,
Mhm.
I spent all this time and I wrote 10, the last one was 10 pages. And I was like, oh, this doesn't work.
Luckily for me, it was something I never even ended up writing because I was like, okay, so he showed his token that had an X. And since I never needed to write any of that, it was just they would walk up and they would know who you were. And I'm like going, yeah. But it was interesting finding a club that was still open to this day. It's like, I think of one of only two in London that's still open for that long. Oh, here's another bit of trivia for you. You guys have all heard of White's, right? In Victorian or Regency in Victorian England. Did you know it started as a chocolate shop? No. It was the first place in London that served chocolate. And I was like, you've got to be kidding. And if you go to the Chocolate Museum in London, they have a replica of White's because it was literally the very first chocolate store in London, England.
I am so stealing that because I'm currently doing an isekai with baking that's set in a parallel Britain. So thank you.
All right, Miss Carr, what is it for you?
Do you really want my rap? Should I pick one to select? I mean, like James, so I did vampires without magic. So if you can imagine that rabbit hole thing I went through just scores and scores of classical vampire literature, myth, legends of lore. But then I took it and said, okay, how? But I can't use magic.
Prophoria.
There's a lot of it was let's just say we started with, okay, vampires are bacteria, werewolves are viruses, and that's where I kept going. So I'm probably one of the very few, other than the author of The Strain, who wrote about vampires who actually had to consult immunologists, doctors, nurses. One of the plot points was inspired by my son, who has an incredibly rare genetic condition. He lacks an immune system. He can't form any antibodies. So there's a whole line of vampire servants who are bred to be perfect hosts who have this condition. I've been to hospitals, and then I've even used the movie Predator as a reference. The number of times I've used Arnold Schwarzenegger films for references in a vampire novel. Well, let's just say you could probably retire on the interest if you compounded all of them. But no, and then I said, okay, well, how would vampires, why would they be from sunlight? Okay, what if they came, like, there's all these myths of where did they come from? Are they aliens or something? Did they come from underwater? Did they come from underground? Are they the source of the uncanny valley? I just started researching all the random crap that could theoretically, tangentially, possibly be tied to vampires and werewolves, and started using it. I even have cilantro as a plot point. Because, cilantro tastes like soap if you're a werewolf. They can't eat chocolates. We're just bringing it back to chocolate. How the transformation works. How do you account for the greater mass? Like, they actually, like a werewolf in human form weighs twice as much as a human does. All these little bits and pieces. Basically, I took everything that ever annoyed me on the why if I had to explain magic in vampire and werewolf lore, and slowly went insane digging it all up. And I guarantee you the best part was when I called a Dodge dealership and asked them if a 6-foot-tall man would fit in the trunk of a Challenger comfortably. And the guys were so bored on like a Monday afternoon that they tested this for me. So one cannot say that you can write fantasy and still not do research that will get you on a watch list. So sorry. I got preference. Like, I always want to put in, I am a writer who wants to know such and such. Like, how to take out bloodstains, how to dispose of body. What does an obligate carnivore truly mean? What foods have the most cellulose? Because it's a cellulose allergy that makes vampires die to staking. Because why not? I could keep going for hours, Jane. You should probably cut me off and go to the next question. Or
so, in other words, they shouldn't be going to Taco Bell then.
No! Oh no! I killed a whole group of vampires with a Parmesan cheese can, a Great Value one exploding. After that, so yes.
You're cut off now. So,
the Parmesan cheese has cellulose in it.
There was a whole big scandal about cheap Parmesan cheese having sawdust, and I used that as a vampire killing bomb.
And if you'd just mixed it with some fake garlic, I mean...
Yeah, they do have an allium allergy, so real garlic works just fine.
So, Nancy, I'm going to come to you on this question. But, so, looking at going down research, I mean, again, there's the notion of big scale research, trying to get that sweeping look, feel, inspiration, or sometimes we're diving down deep into that. What, like a conversation I had, what were the China patterns that were available? Or what was, what sort of lace was used in the ruffle? What sort of fabric was available at the time? What would... food and drink, because I'm a firm believer that everything's got to have food and drink, because otherwise it gets really boring. So, Nancy, for you, when you're thinking about these things, what comes first for you in terms of doing this kind of research? Is it going for the big picture, the aesthetic, the look, the feel, or is it really getting down to those nitty-gritty details that help set the tone? And what kind of research helps you do that?
Well, I read a lot of social history because that kind of helps me know who's allowed to talk to whom in a given time period. With the science fiction, it can be whatever I want. Like Mel was saying, it's my world. I do it like I want to. It's a lot easier. I still have to do some research for various things about it, like the ocean thing. But for historical research, biographies are a huge help. The Herald of Day, the book directly behind me, is set in the reign of Charles II. And I got a lot of useful social information from Antonia Fraser's biography of Charles II. For example, people used to say odds fish when they were vexed about something. Well, odds fish is their very careful way of saying God's flesh. but they weren't supposed to say that because that was blasphemy and therefore odds fish. You know, kind of like fecking instead of fucking for the verb. So I read a lot of social history, and there again, the big picture can come from a good period history. And a history of a city can also give you ideas for how people lived, what their jobs were, who was around, how did things work. There's a really good history of Antwerp by, I think the author is Michael Pye, P-Y-E, that has a lot of details about medieval and early modern Antwerp that you could take for any city you were building. So I tend to go to history and social history for that. And I also have books on food history because, you know, people have to eat, like you said. So for me, it's mostly books. Sometimes it's websites and groups that are interested in something. For my World War II book, which is the third book in the trilogy for the Herald of Day, opens during the Dunkirk evacuation, the rush to Dunkirk to get on the ships and escape from the Germans. And the heroine's a photojournalist, and she's helping the medics because they're being shelled by the Germans the whole time they're doing this. And I thought, what's in a medic's field kit in 1940? And I found this guy, somebody mentioned YouTube earlier. His name's Rifleman Moore, and he's really into military history. And he has field kits and uniforms and weapons and all this stuff. And it's like, I gave him a thank you in the acknowledgments. Not that I think he'll ever see it. Not that I know who he actually is. But YouTube can sometimes have really useful things. Like, I think it was Ken who was saying walking tours can be really useful. So I use all those things. That's a very long answer to your very short question, but the answer is all of that stuff. And also it gave me a chance to drop my ball.
James?
So this is where I will bring in Saint Germain, because he is a figure who is tangentially rooted in all of history from a certain point on and about 300 years before his official appearance. So what I end up having to do for him and his parts, and this is very much similar to what, you know, Mel was saying, there's like 2 sentences about this, but I have to read like a 400-page historical book to get the complete reference and the grounding so that I don't like, you know, Ghostbusters and Cross the Streams and just really blow up the universe. For instance, doing the spinoff I'm doing with him, I start him off in the court of Rudolph II because he is one of the distant Habsburg cousins, and that's kind of how he maintains his anonymity going for about 300 years until the 1700s France. He's just a distant Habsburg. You know, there's a lot of them. He just you know dives into the family treasure and he's like, oh yeah, I'm this cousin's kid now. You know, he's an immortal alchemist. But he is also known in his legend in the 1700s to play the violin quite beautifully. And I am setting this series in 1580 for a very specific reason to do with the main series. And his cousin Rudy asks him to play for the court. So I'm just this one-off thing. I'm like, okay, what would be a popular, you know, piece of music played on the violin at court in 1580s Prague? Nothing. The violin in its current form had only come into existence about 30 years prior in 1550s. So I had to pivot a little bit and make something up and also explain how this guy had a violin when it wasn't a, you know, mainstream instrument until the, 1650s, I think, something like that. So that led me on a rabbit hole to Catherine de' Medici and the invention of it in Italy and its import to France, where he was at court growing up, etc. And he won it off of a guy playing a proto form of poker, because also poker didn't exist back then, but there were other gambling card games. So it was just like thing after thing after thing that coincidentally, thankfully lined up to be what I wanted it to be and have him fit in history properly. But it was also an afternoon spent on, getting stuck in one rabbit hole that led to another rabbit hole that branched off into another rabbit hole, all just so he could play the frickin' violin at a, midnight ball.
Matthew?
Are we talking about primary sources of research?
Well, whatever path makes sense for you to take. It's much more a matter of looking at how you approach it. What are the main things you're looking to focus on? Are you looking to take big picture? Are you looking to go in the details? Are you getting character focused? Or what are you doing, and what sort of sources are you using to dive into that?
Okay, for the Wasteland series, which is the one that was more research intensive, the Long War stuff is like 2009 through 2012 with X-Filesy stuff going on in the background. A lot of books, a lot of military history books, and sometimes you pick up a lot of social history stuff along the way. And some very specific things pop up. Like there's an anecdote in Serpent Sword, the second Battle of the Wastelands novel, that's actually from the Japanese bombing of Chongqing during World War II. I just read a lot of books, and anything that is interesting or I think might be useful, I just type it up in a Word doc. Used to be one big Word document called Character Sketches, but the document was so big it started taking time to load. So I spun off like 10 smaller documents and put them all in a big folder called Research Notes. And when I listen to podcasts, a lot of times history podcasts interview authors. So then there's one podcast I listened to had a whole interview with an author of a book about the Over the Hump, flying from India to China during World War II. And that I was able to pillage a lot of stuff from that for most of the Wastelands world, but some other stuff as well, just type in my notes. And something I learned is that your library system, if you have a library card, you can download audiobooks. They typically use the Libby or Hoopla apps, and you can stream those while you're driving. And I have a long commute, and that comes in really handy. Also, time to piss some people off. Google Gemini. It functions more like an upgraded search engine than anything else.
It has a lot of issues to it, but yeah,
like
as an engine.
I'm thinking of serializing a Wastelands story that takes place much earlier, and Google Gemini gave me at least a bunch of authentic sounding Scandinavian stuff I can use for like the names of islands and all that. So some of this 20,000 names stuff that was brought up earlier, that might be useful as well, because Scandinavian names tend to be something son, something daughter, unless you earned it, like an epithet. So more names, so it's not like the same 10 people.
Yeah, well, and we're also back to the ask for the sources.
Oh yeah, Google Gemini has little links you can click on.
Yeah.
Although I did ask Google Gemini about, to come up with like a tariff regime to reduce wastefulness, because I hate fast fashion. And it wrote me this multi-paragraph monstrosity based apparently on one link. That
Sounds
one
about
link
right.
is what I ended up sharing with people.
So Mel, how about for you?
Two things for you. First, there is a line of books called How Done It. They have books on how poisons work, and not just the poison, but what it does to the body. They also have another one that I have on my that has how trauma works. What actually happens if somebody hits you with a baseball bat? We all know that Schwarzenegger just goes and keeps running. That isn't actually what happens. And so if you're writing really physical fight scenes and stuff where the person's not superhuman for one reason or another, these are great books. The other one is a website I'm going to show you, because I very much am the whole, and she grabbed her dress and pulled it on, and it was, and then my mind stops, because I have absolutely no idea what colors are available in 1865 or what the dress would look like. So one of the great ones I found is this website. It is the Fashion History website by one of the New York City colleges. And it's really great because you can go to the time period and go, okay, I'm going to go 16th century. I'm placing this in 1543. You click on it, and it actually shows you actual pictures and talks about why they were wearing it, how it changed, and everything else with evidence as to what was going on. It talks about the patterns, and you can actually see that different areas had different things as you go through history. And it's really great when you're trying to figure out, okay, I'm writing a book that happens in 1865. What are they wearing? What are the men wearing? What colors are there? Because all of this comes in. Now, I will say that also, if you ever get a chance, because I brought it up to somebody one time and we all just had blank looks, is if you're a woman in 16 through 1900s, you have all these skirts and stuff, what happens when you're on your period? And literally, we're all just sitting here and our minds just go blank. There's this awesome lady on YouTube who will actually wear the hoops and shows you how you would lift the skirt up to go to the bathroom, how they would change pads and everything else. And it was fascinating because I'm going, oh, we, or most of us, at least in America, sit backwards on the toilet. You would sit forwards so that you could reach and deal with what you wanted while you held the hoop skirts up. So no, I mean, there are just so many things. One of the other things, especially if you're like Nancy and you write historical stuff, I have a degree in psychology, so I took all of the mandatory, American history, European history and stuff. Our education system is horrible about telling you what's happening at the same time in different places, because you learn American history as if it's independent from Chinese history, or what was going on in the Incas and Peru and stuff like this. One of the facts that popped up one day is, did you know that Oxford is older than the Aztec Empire? And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
No, they can't. Yeah, no, it's right. Because we teach it. So this is like one of the most amazing books I've ever found. It's called the Timetable of History. And when you open it up, it actually talks history, literature, religion, visual arts, music, science, technology, daily life. And it goes all the way across as to what was happening in each year across. So you can see what was happening with all of the different cultures and histories around the world, which is really fun, especially when you get into more modern stuff, trying to figure out, okay, like Nancy was talking about World War II. Well, what else was going on in South America? Or what was happening in all these different other places that we don't learn about when we learn about this section of history, because we isolate it. And so it's well worth finding that one, just because it gives you a better idea of how things like paper is being discovered in different places across the world. Damascus steel was actually discovered multiple times by multiple countries. And we just don't always realize how much things interact. So that's always fun.
Rachel?
Yeah, that book is the, yes, you could theoretically have a cowboy with Nintendo playing cards talking to a samurai. And it'd be perfectly perfectly historically accurate.
Historically accurate. Mm-hmm.
And I do love all that because you do tend to think isolated. It's what I always try to remind myself, that Cleopatra is closer to the Kardashians than to the Great Pyramids, or a Stegosaurus is farther away from a T-Rex than a T-Rex is from a chicken, which is as close to a chicken is as close to a T-Rex as a chimpanzee is as close to a human. Or the fact that the
pyramids were built when there's still mammoths alive.
Yes. You have entered my zone of weird tangential things.
But it's so much fun because it enriches your writing so much, especially if you're doing anything that's Earth and contemporary. But if you do sci-fi and wonder, you realize that really weird things can be happening at the same time.
Absolutely. So I think I'll just go, because they've had some great stuff. But one thing I try to do, which is actually a process thing about research, because all these links have been really good, is what I try to do is in the early parts, before I even start writing the draft, is do kind of like we would do for a language, like the immersion therapy. Current book I'm working on is an isekai. So already we're talking about portals, going to another world, lots of fantasy, and it has baking. So what I did for months was I watched anime and I baked, and I got to say it was writing research. But it got me in the mindset. Like I would set challenges to myself, like, could you cook this? And then how would magic interfere? Or what would an elf do? Or what if orcs had colder hands? Oh, they would make better scones. Okay. And I would use this to start building all these layers of depth so that when I actually wrote, it wouldn't be as much. But anything when you're talking about those minutiae, because I had to look at the history, because if, say, the orcs were Edwardian and made scones, would they have scones available and what would they be wearing? So I think it's important, like, if you're especially a person who kind of has a little bit of a spicy brain that likes to go off, is you have to be able to get as much research soaked in, then you write, and you try your best to, in edits, go and do those lookups. Like, okay, I'm going to fact check here. I'm going to do this, because otherwise, and I'm guilty of this, and I'm 99% sure every writer is, you've started typing and then you go in that browser window to look one thing up for one sentence. And 3 hours later, you have gotten the answer. I see you. I see you down there, Mel. So I think it's important that when you get a process for research, you try to resist that when you're actually in the flow of writing, stopping and looking stuff up, and sort of immerse, write, and then in edits is where you do your fact. Treat your edits like your editor fact checking another person's writing, not just yourself, because if you try to do it too much in the creativity, you really can go down the rabbit hole a lot. But that is literally just one pass. Some people I know do that. They like to stop and look it up each time.
Or like Nancy, she never got a real answer, but finally had to make it up. But that's a different story.
Hey, we've all made crap up. I made up the fact that there were vampire treaties with the Romans in Okinawa, and after I published my book, they found Roman artifacts in Okinawa. So, okay, it sometimes just works out.
Ken?
After many years of playing with mythology and as a personal hobby, I decided to write these books. So I decided to take our history, use Groundhog Day, and then I went down every rabbit hole you can imagine with every myth you can think of. So I did the whole Cain, the fall of Eliezer. That's actually the Hebrew name for Lazarus. So Lazarus is the main character in most of my books for this series. So a lot of religious history, and whereas he uses Word, I use Excel. And I opened it up while we were talking, and it says slow workbook, and I have like 10 of these. So yeah, I mean, it's just my thing was just I have a room across from right here that's about 13, it's about 18 foot long, and I have 10-foot ceilings, and that whole wall is full of nothing but myth. So I did a lot.
Nice.
Oh, that's so nice.
Well, and unfortunately, I'm going to be getting rid of that in about 3 years. So anybody who wants dibs, we can talk.
Rachel and I are both like,
We can talk. There's a lot of stuff in there that should be burned, but we get it out later. But yeah, it's a lot of reading old history books. So I have a lot of books from the 1900s, early 1900s, late 1800s, for instance, from Masonic history. So I did a whole stuff on that because I used a lot of their stuff. And yeah, so I just twisted everything you can imagine, and then threw it into a groundhog situation and came up with it. But that's what I do is I start with the books, and then I start with an Excel spreadsheet. I write the beginning of my story, and then I write the ending, even if it's just a page. And then you can get to the end by following the headlights at dark. So,
You're supposed to hiss when you do that, Mel.
was hissing. I just wasn't hissing loud.
Hey, what's wrong with the plantsers? We plot a little bit and then we pants our way to it.
I just love the fact that he actually knows how the books end, because every single time I've tried to do that, whatever I think the end is usually happens like chapter 5.
Oh, it doesn't
And then it goes off the rails.
surprise me. For instance, I actually was in the middle of that series there, The Wonder Awakens, and the second book. one of the characters that's supposed to continue through the whole series, I wind up killing. It's like,
Yep.
oh, that happened, and I just got up
Mhm.
from my computer after I did it and went,
Oops.
shit, and I walked off. I didn't even save. I just walked.
Yep.
We've all
still,
killed
you know,
our characters
it's the same.
before just to make them behave.
Yeah. I have one character I tried to kill for 6 books, and he kept surviving, and I was just annoyed.
Oh, I have one of those too. In the first book of a session here, a girl named Heather was supposed to die at this wedding that they went to. In the first like 7 chapters, she gets stabbed in the gut, just a gut wound. We all know that's going to go badly. Somehow she survives, and survives for 6 more books as regular, and then stuff happens. But still, she's still not dead. She just won't die.
Sorry, we're rabbit holing, Jim. We're rabbit holing.
Well, I think on that note,
Oh, wait. If you're about to wrap up, can I show the other websites that are like really
Sure.
awesome? And I'll put the link.
Please.
I did find some
Absolutely.
cool websites. Okay. Just because I love
I
people
want
and
to
I
know
love
how many of
sharing
these I
knowledge.
use these too, because
So-
I'm laughing.
I have a silly
Okay.
question with some of these websites.
Mhm.
Is there a place you can make a post so we can copy these? I know that you're
I'm putting them in the chat.
I know you put them in the thing, but once we go, the thing goes away.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll try to
I
remember
can
to
do
put it in
that.
the show notes.
Yeah, it would be nice if when it's posted, if these were in the description.
So this is a really cool website. It's called the Survivor Web Library. So if you are ever in the situation where you need to know how to go fishing and do stuff like that, there are all of these PDFs.
Oh,
That will
this
tell
is like
you-
crack.
I told you I wanted to show the websites. And it's primarily set up for if the world ends, you can figure out how to do it. But let's say you
How
need
will
to
we have
know.
the internet?
Well, but let's say things are just going wrong and you need to know how to take care of your pigs, which is what swine are. Look at this.
Wow.
So it's
When it starts with a
extremely,
treatise on
extremely cool.
swine,
Hey, look, rat control. You have a rat problem, need to know what to do. Now, some of them are really old, which is what makes it so fascinating. You know, because the technology changes, but you can also get things that are much closer to modern.
But I mean, in New England, they thought strongly worded letters would deter vermin at one point.
Not
So-
usually.
yeah, but that's
Okay,
where HOAs came
everybody.
from.
Mm.
Everybody should know about Project Gutenberg. Flat out, you should know about Project Gutenberg. Any book that is open domain is in Project Gutenberg. So basically, anything that was published prior to, I think we're up to about 1940, 1950, is on here and it can legally be used. There is no copyright. There is no nothing. It is called a public domain. You can go in and get these. So you can get Shakespeare. You can get anything basically that was published prior to about 1950 at this point. Okay? The other one is NASA.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know this, but a few years ago, NASA said, tell you what, all of the pictures that we've gotten over all of the years are now public domain. You can use them. So if you go to NASA and go to images and you go, oh, I want to see pictures of the Horsehead Nebula, you type it in and there are pictures and it's just loading slow because it is huge. There are so many pictures and that you can go in and look at the pictures. You can get details. It will tell you when it was taken, everything else. And it is amazing because if you're just like me and love the pictures of the nebula and everything else, this is an amazing site. And again, it's considered public domain, so you can download it and use it any way you want. Okay. The last one. I go down rabbit holes, not so much for myself, but I used to for my parents about medical research and stuff. This is the DOJ. It allows you to find any journal or article, we're talking peer-reviewed stuff like that, and be able to look them up and look at all of the various things. There's another one that I couldn't find the link of. But some lady in Russia got pissed at all of the gatekeeping that's happening with scientific journals nowadays, and she has created a website and is being sued about it. But that anybody can post their peer-reviewed articles to, and it is then open access to anybody in the world. I'm still trying to. I saw it and I couldn't find the link in time for this, but this is just cool because sometimes trying to find out medical stuff, it's so gate kept that it's really hard to get to. But there are the amazing websites. I will post the links in the chat and then Jim can work.
What, work? You want me to work?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, as I think everybody can tell, we could spend at least 2 or 3 weeks sitting here talking about nothing but research.
And we wouldn't get any writing done. Which is our goal.
So, I'm going to make everybody go back to writing. But before we do that, let's make sure everybody knows where to find what's already out the door so they can find out about your bad research. So, Ms. Carr.
All right. If you want to find my website, it's rachelecarr.com because Rachel Carr wrote vegan cookbooks and you probably don't want to confuse us. If you want to find me on social media, all of my handles are @TotalRecar. Yes, I even snuck an Arnie reference into my online handle.
Ken?
Hi, Ken Lange, author, or Ken Lange, but you have to have the E. If you go with the L-A-N-G, you're going to get somebody very different. They do like police procedurals, and they're bad. Okay, they're not bad. They're just not my stuff, and people yell at me over it because they had some editing issues 10 years ago, and I got yelled at for it. So I'm kind of mad about that. I'm a little bitter.
At least you didn't get asked how to cook tofu.
No, but okay. Yeah.
I suspect it's better for you to be asked how to cook tofu than necessarily the other Rachel Carr.
Yeah. She has gotten some questions about kittens and blenders.
Oh, yeah.
Nancy?
No.
NancyNorthcott.com is my website. Nancy Northcott on most social media, Nancy Northcott author on Instagram. And not long after we're recording this, I will be, along with lots of these other people, at DragonCon. And then in October, I'll be at Multiverse in the middle of the month. And at the end of the month, I'll be at the Bowling Green State University Conference on Soap Opera and Popular Culture on a panel discussing Batman as soap opera.
That sounds amazing.
Especially in the Zack Snyder world. James.
Hey, J.E. Pittman. You can find me at halfacrepond.com. I also do have jepittman.com, but there's very little there. Stay tuned for more. On all the socials, I'm either J.E. Pittman or on the Facebook, it's J.E. Pittman Writes. Also, regular on the con circuit, so come find me at your favorite local con. I'll be at Dragon. I'll be at Multiverse. I'll be at... I don't even remember how many cons going forward after Dragon, so I'll be there. Come see me.
Matthew?
All right. If you're coming to DragonCon, I'm going to be on 2 panels on Saturday. One of them is the Weird Western one. I believe that's at 4 o'clock. And the other one is on the show American Primeval. That's at 7. I'm also going to be the Cartersville Comic Con in Cartersville, Georgia on October 11th. And online, the closest thing I have to an author webpage is my Substack, The World According to Quinn. From there, it links to everything else, like my Amazon page. I have a Patreon, not much. Everything there is on Substack. I'm putting some things on Patreon as well. And other bits and bobs.
Mel?
My name is Mel Todd. I own Badash Publishing. You can find that at Badash Publishing, and note that it's ASH, not what I'm sitting on. You can find me under most socials under Badash Books, or you can also find me under meltodd.com. I also will be at DragonCon. I will be at ton of panels. I will have a booth. And then Friday night, for those of you who don't know, at DragonCon is the Fantasy Gather. It is held in the Hyatt, the International Ballroom. And that is where pretty much most of us indie authors will have tables so that you can come and buy stuff. So if you're seeing this before DragonCon, you need to put the Fantasy Gather Friday from 8 till midnight. We will be there selling our artwork, our wonderful, wonderful books that you know you want to come buy. There. Other than that, you can hit me up on most of the socials, and I put it this way: if I don't respond, assume I didn't see it, because otherwise I usually respond.
We're all in.
And if you're seeing this after DragonCon, make plans for next DragonCon, where we will all be at the same place yet again.
They
or
do
you
tend to
can
drag
go to my
me back.
website and just buy it directly from me, or Amazon if you want the ebook version.
Because most
I
of
have
us
to
are
produce them.
shameless enough to sign and ship them as well. And easiest way to find me is jamespnettles.com, authoressentialsworkshops.com, creatingpros.com, of course here at ConTinual and at Dragon. For our creative business types, I will be doing a workshop on, is it Friday? I think that workshop is on Sunday. I'll be doing the intellectual property workshop on Friday, and we'll also be doing an IP panel as well on, I believe, Saturday. I got to look back at my schedule, and I'll be at the Fantasy Gather as well, plus on a bunch of different panels all over the place. So, but at least this year, my schedule is such that I get to have dinner. We'll go with that for this year. And until next time.
That's not allowed.
Yeah.
Well,
Actually, I have to buy you dinner for schlepping all my books, because I'll be at the Fantasy Gather at DragonCon too. Shing.
So until then, just come see us at the Gather. We'll have a good time. Other than that, trip down those rabbit holes and get back to writing.